And after 30 days, it was insane to see that the plant that was bullied was, looking super dull, like some leaves had died. It was really looking bad. While the other one was like thriving and blooming, looking great and perfect. I think this can be translated just as well to really remember and remind ourselves to not bully ourselves, to think of yourself as a almost plant, right? That needs words of encouragement, that needs words of love to be able to grow and flourish. I think that can be really, really helpful. Hello everyone and welcome back to the very beginning. So excited that you're tuning in again. This time it's not Thursday, it's actually Wednesday that I'm recording it, and it's not just any Wednesday, it's Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day from me to you. And I wanted to use that opportunity of Valentine's Day to really have kind of a love-related topic, but not so much as kind of the cliche, love in the context of partnership, but really focusing on yourself. So I want to talk about self-love, about trusting your body, about self-respect, and all things that have to do with ourselves today. As you can see in the background, if you're watching this on video, my doggy Bella is back with me again. She's now my constant co-host, it seems, having a good nap back there. But yeah, apologies in advance if she makes any noise, and also apologies if you listened last week and you kind of noticed a lot of background noise. It was really me being so fiddly with my fingers. I was kind of touching the mic stand all the time. So today I'll try to keep my hands to myself. But Valentine's Day. I don't know how you feel about it. I'm personally not the biggest Valentine's Day fan, I have to say. I don't know what it is about it. Like, I've always kind of struggled with that holiday. I find it to be a bit, fake, may I say, a bit inauthentic, just seeing kind of everyone almost being, or many men being forced or feeling maybe obliged to buy flowers or chocolates. It almost seems like they're not, like, many do not do it from their heart, but just kind of as a because it's expected, almost as a check mark. So I personally always ask my husband, like, do not get me any flowers today, please. I mean, I'm more than happy to receive them any other day of the year, but not today, because I don't know, I just feel like, you should do it because you want to and not because you feel like obliged to. But again, just my personal opinion. But I do like to take today as a reminder of self-love and kind of that important relationship that you have with yourself. And it reminded me of my favorite quote from Sex and the City. I don't know if you're also such a big Sex and the City fan as I am. At the end of the series, when Carrie walks down the road and says that the most exciting, challenging, and significant relationship of all is the one you have with yourself. And I think that is so true. Over my entire, I would say, like, kind of growing up, puberty, early 20s, I feel like I've been on such a long road to really work on that relationship, work on myself, being comfortable with being with myself, kind of not seeking validation in others, or not, looking for others to fulfill any kind of gaps or give me any kind of, validation. So I think that we are on such a constant journey of self-love and self-acceptance. But I think especially in a fertility context, and that's why I wanted to talk about it today, it's such a difficult one. And that's also something I really struggled with, right? Because if you're trying to conceive and you see month after month after month a negative test, it's so hard to still be like, I love myself, I love my body, I'm great. Because it's so easy to have these thoughts creep in, right? That, like, I'm not good enough, I can't do the one thing that everyone else can do, and have kind of all these really, really tricky thoughts that come in that are almost kind of like self-sabotaging. Or, if you're going through IVF and you feel so bloated and so hormonal, it's just so hard, right? To stay in this positive mindset of actually, I still appreciate myself and I appreciate my body because it so quickly becomes you against your body. And even if you're not, going through any kind of fertility challenges, I think every woman experiencing, kind of the cyclical ups and downs. And if you haven't watched or listened to that episode, I can link it below where I talk kind of all about the different phases of the cycles, of our cycle, all of my learnings there. But I mean, in that kind of hormonal, right up and down and that hormonal roller coaster, it's also really, really tough to just every day be, really appreciative of what our bodies are doing. And also when I talk about self-love, I really don't mean it in a context of like, hey, every day I want, myself, or like I expect myself to say like, I look great, I love myself, I'm perfect. Like not at all. I think that would be really, really unrealistic to do and say. But I really mean it more from kind of an acceptance standpoint and from a thinking good thoughts and kind thoughts about yourself. And, to be okay with saying like, hey, today I feel really comfortable. I feel great. I'm happy with myself. And on other days where maybe we don't feel so good, to almost have like a little bit of, a toolbox that we can then go back to really figure out what can we do to just make ourselves feel a little bit better, but at the same time, not let ourselves go into this like super negative mindset of having like doubts about ourselves, about our confidence, about our bodies, and so on. So today I kind of want to, put this whole episode under the umbrella of being your own Valentine and giving yourself the gift to really accept yourself and love yourself and celebrate yourself. So I put together kind of my top tips that helped me in the past to really embrace that self-acceptance, as I said, or like that self-love in kind of as good as possible every day of my life. So my first tip, and that sounds a bit weird, so I'll stick with me for a second. I'll explain what I mean by that. My first tip is to really mirror any negative thought that you have on someone who is important to you. And what do I mean by that is, imagine some negative thought creeps in. So you're thinking something along the lines of like, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't like myself today. I'm, if you're in a fertility context, it could be like, my God, I suck, I hate my body, I'm not able to get pregnant, I feel like such a loser, right? So imagine these negative thoughts creep in. And instead of right away just saying like, oh no, I shouldn't be thinking like this, because honestly, I mean, I don't know about you, but it doesn't really help me just to say, oh no, that's a bad thought to have. So just allowing these thoughts in, but then instead of kind of letting them soak into you, think about how this would feel like if you were to translate them on a friend or someone maybe that is close to you that you know that is struggling to conceive, right? So if you were to think about this person like, oh, this person able to get pregnant, what a loser, right? Like what a... She probably hates her own body, like she's not capable of doing this. So immediately you'll be like, oh my God, no, I wouldn't say those words to that person. I wouldn't think like that about my friend. What am I doing, right? Or maybe in a different context, if maybe you're bloated or you're on your period or you're going through IVF and you're full of hormones and you think like, oh, I look so fat, I look bloated, I don't feel like myself, I suck. Again, if you were to translate that on someone who you care about, like let's say your best friend, your sister, your mother, or maybe if you already have kids, your daughter, you would immediately be like, I would never, ever think like that about that person, or I would never, ever say those thoughts to that person. So I think if we try to almost like see if that shoe that we're trying to put on ourselves fit on a person we care about, we will be so quick to say like, oh my God, no, never in a million years would I think like that about that person. And for me personally, it really helps to then ask myself, well, then why am I thinking like this about myself, right? So kind of putting that, that different head on to see, well, does this fit for the other person? And if not, then why in the world would I ever have these negative thoughts about myself? So I think it does help to try to not judge ourselves so harshly. And I think we'll always probably be kind of our own hardest critic, but still kind of putting yourself in this other perspective, seeing if you were to ever think like that about a person you care about might help you to start thinking less negatively about yourself. Tip number 2 is to seek out spaces that inspire you and make you feel seen. I did my very first retreat last year with one of my closest friends, and it was honestly one of the best experiences ever. It was a retreat for only women. I think it was, I don't remember how it was called, but it was kind of about all kind of different topics that I'm really into. We did yoga there. It was really good plant-based food. There's also a little bit on astrology, on cyclical living. So super, super interesting. But I think what I found the most transformative about it is really to be in this group of women and really allow myself to be vulnerable and also open up and kind of sharing what's in my heart. And so did the others. And I think that honestly also became one of the reasons why I feel so strongly about sharing all these personal topics, about talking about all these intimate topics, because I noticed, there and then in this small room of, let's say, 15, 20 women, how transformative it can be when we allow ourselves to speak our truth, to show ourselves vulnerably. I remember how we kind of went one by one at the end of the retreat to kind of say, what we found to be the most, or what we're grateful for that we experienced, or kind of what the feeling was that came up for us. And one woman said that she, kind of that weekend made her notice how long it has been since she has really smiled or laughed. And honestly, it made everyone cry. But it was so nice to kind of be in that space where you felt so seen and heard and inspired, right? And at the same time, it also really helped you to accept and love yourself more, because then you saw, well, everyone kind of has their package to carry more or less, right? And everyone has different things they're dealing with. So you're not alone with this, no matter what struggle you're going through, no matter it's fertility or something else. And I mean, it doesn't have to apply to just this live physical context. It's the same, and I think even maybe more important so in the digital world that is so present in our lives, right? Especially on social media. I think I talked about this on other episodes here and there before, but I think it's so important to really be so conscious about the content you consume, especially when it comes to self-love, because there is a lot of really fake content out there. I mean, literally, there are accounts of, people generated by AI that aren't even real, that then kind of live up to all these different beauty standards that a human can't even live up to, because again, it's not a real human being shown there. But I think it's so important to really be super conscious what you consume. And I mean, I don't think it's realistic to say delete all your social media, don't consume it at all, because it's part of our lives. But I think what we can try to start doing is just to be really selective about, the people that we follow, the content that we consume. I kind of, made a conscious decision to unfollow certain people and then follow, other maybe influencers or people that are doing really inspiring work that I find really, uplifting. And at the same time, you can also be really conscious about limiting your time on social media, right? Putting kind of those daily limits on each social media platform to just not allow yourself to be soaked into that hole and soaked into your bubble. Because I heard from so many friends that especially in those moments when we struggle to already love ourselves, when we struggle to accept ourselves, we tend to then go on social media. And then what do we see? We see some highlight reel of someone maybe, showing even a photoshopped image of their perfect body on a beach. And of course, how does that help to make ourselves feel better? It just doesn't. So I think being really conscious about that, again, seeking out those inspiring places, no matter what it is, a retreat, a yoga class, a dance class, going for a cup of coffee or a glass of wine with a couple of friends that really inspire you and can hold that vulnerable space for you, or being really, really conscious about the content that you consume digitally, I think can make a really, really big difference. Tip number 3 is, and I mean, that one is quite obvious, but taking time for yourself. And again, like not a groundbreaking tip, but I think it's so important to still remind ourselves to do that. I used to feel so bad about it, and honestly still sometimes do, especially when there's a lot going on, especially when you have so much on a to-do list, or maybe, when we have such a long to-do list, like both me and my partner together, and then we're kind of sharing it, and then I know, I won't be able to uphold my list of tasks because I just need to take a break for whatever reason. But I think it's so important to still do it, and then, kind of figure out what is it then really that you need to do to kind of recharge, right? Is it going to yoga class? Is it maybe going to the hairdresser? Because, that will just make you feel so much better. Because remember, as women, we are going through all these different phases, all these different hormones. And that's not even talking about any kind of fertility journeys, so IVF journeys. But if you are going through these, it's even more important to take this time for yourself, to allow to just be, or to allow to, get out of that bubble of doing, and having to deliver, and just allow yourself to kind of recharge. And what I found quite helpful to have with my partner is almost like a little emergency button, right? So that we kind of both know that if we feel kind of overwhelmed, no matter if it's with work or with life, we can say like, hey, I just need to do this, right? I just need to go to that, and the other person wouldn't meet that reaction, or wouldn't react with kind of judgment, right? Or wouldn't feel like let down, because I think that's so important, to hold that space for each other, to allow to really, do what makes you feel better in that moment, and not, meet the other person with kind of any issues around why you're doing this or why you're letting me down. So I think having this conversation could be really helpful if you, have a partner, or maybe even if you're living with a roommate, right? To just kind of know, like, I promise this week I'll do X, Y, Z, but right now I'll just need to, go and take a yoga class, and I promise I'll do it after. And then, that the other person kind of meets you with acceptance and not judgment. And then tip number 4 is to really speak kind words to attract growth. There was this really interesting experiment I read about as I was preparing for this episode. I heard about it before. I don't know if you did, but it was a couple of years ago, conducted in a school, where basically 2 different plants, I think it was called the anti-bullying plant experiment. But it's essentially 2 plants that were exactly the same plants in exactly the same conditions were kind of put up in a school. And then for 30 days, for one plant was talked to by a group of kids with really negative words. So they were like really bullying that plant, saying really hateful things to that plant, kind of being really mean. I mean, not physically, but just verbally. And then the other plant, it would only receive words of encouragement, of love. The kids would really talk kind words to it. And after 30 days, they examined kind of how were there any changes between those 2 plants. And keep in mind, they were kept under exactly the same conditions, in exactly the same environment, like same light, same water, everything. Just really the words that the plants were receiving were different. And after 30 days, it was insane to see that the plant that was bullied was, looking super dull, like some leaves had died. It was really looking bad. While the other one was like thriving and blooming, looking great and perfect. And I think that's that was an experiment for anti-bullying, to kind of show kids, the effects of bullying and why they should be kind to their fellow students. But I think this can be translated just as well to really remember and remind ourselves to not bully ourselves, because that's something that I think we intend, or we do much quicker, as I said in the beginning in tip 1, to speak those negative words to ourselves. For some reason, we are so quick to do. So it's so important to remember, right, that it's impossible, right, to expect our bodies, or to expect ourselves to feel good, to expect ourselves to be confident, or even if you are in a fertility context, to expect your body to be able to conceive or get pregnant, if constantly all you are saying to yourself is negative thoughts, if constantly all you have in your mind, kind of is self-judgment and self-doubt. So even though this can be so tricky, and believe me, I've been there, right? Especially when you're full of hormones and you're kind of in this really negative spiral. But just to kind of remember this little plant experiment, right? And to think of yourself as a almost plant, right? That needs words of encouragement, that needs words of love to be able to grow and flourish. I think that can be really, really helpful when you think about like, how can I treat myself better? How can I treat myself with more love and more respect? So I hope these couple of tips really help you if you struggle to appreciate yourself, if you struggle to respect yourself. And again, it's not about, kind of a quick remedy and a quick fix. And of course, if you're struggling with, kind of deep negative thoughts and deep negative feelings, I've said it so many times, I'm such a believer in therapy and coaching, whatever it is. I could only, I can't give any medical advice, medical tips, but there, like, of course, I can only encourage you to seek the professional help if needed. But I think on a daily basis, if, you have those negative thoughts creeping in, I hope that these couple of tips can really help just to break out of that negative cycle. And especially on holidays, right? And days like Valentine's Day, if you find yourself perhaps not in the position or in the situation you would like to be, right? Like if you're single and you would prefer to be in a relationship, or maybe you have been in a long relationship and you just anxiously waiting to get engaged or to get married or whatever it is, right? I just want to send out that reminder that you don't have to look outside of yourself, right? That maybe today, and maybe even every other Valentine's Day, we can make it about, celebrating ourselves and celebrating our own beautiful, wonderful self, and can totally be our own Valentine, right? So with that, I just want to send you, a lot of love from me to you. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Embrace some wonderful self-love, self-care ritual. Think some positive thoughts to yourselves. And excited to see you again next week. And of course, if you like that episode, I would really appreciate if you subscribe, or if you like it, if you leave a review. Really means a lot, and I absolutely love to receive your comments and feedback, so please continue sending those. Thank you very much, and see you next time.